I'm 19 and my parents are strict about the ethnicities and races that we're allowed to date. It's not because they're racist, but because they want us to date people within cultures that are more compatible with ours, especially since our parents are immigrants. My younger sister, 17, is a senior in high school and has a dance coming up. Over dinner last night, she was talking about how excited she was to go when my parents asked her whether she had a date. My sister said yes, and they asked her what her date's ethnicity was. My sister lied and said that her date was white. Knowing that her date was not white, I corrected her and told my parents that he was actually black. This resulted in a big argument between my sister and our parents, and she's now grounded and no longer able to go to the dance at all. My parents' cultural difference argument, in my opinion, is justified. We don't discriminate against other races and ethnicities at all. I know that both of my parents have coworkers and friends from many different backgrounds, and they don't treat them differently based on that. However, it is different for dating and relationships. Our relatives and others in our cultural community would treat us differently knowing that there was a black person in the family, and that would lead to a conflict between many people. It's more of a way of protecting ourselves rather than discrimination against other groups. I talked to some of my friends about it today, and some of the people said I was an asshole for exposing my sister's lie, but some took my side saying that my sister shouldn't have lied in the first place if she wasn't ready to face the consequences. Am I the asshole for exposing my sister's lie? As much as it pains me to say this, before my daughter turned 17, I didn't feel any love for her. I didn't even like her, really. She certainly thought I did, but on the inside, I just couldn't feel anything but annoyance towards her. She was very manipulative and needed constant attention. I know that this is a common feeling in parents, but I feel so ashamed to actually say it out loud. Two particularly traumatic instances for me were one, where I was going through an extremely tough time and she wasn't there for me. She never gave me support or comfort that I needed, and there is no worse feeling than being betrayed by family. She was a teenager and old enough to know better. And two, there was a period when she was really pestering me to take her to a psychologist, and one time I caught her forcing herself to throw up. I didn't know what to do and felt completely helpless. She's 18 now and lots better. She almost never complains about anything and is always there when I need a shoulder to cry on. My two older children were visiting last night and we were discussing family memories, and while we were joking, I mentioned in passing to her, "You really fucked me up good." She asked what I meant, and I told her about the two incidents I mentioned before. She got quiet and eventually said, I really needed your help back then, and you just wouldn't." I told her that I needed her help too, but she came back with, "I'm your daughter." I told her, "Yes, and I'm your mother. What's your point?" She ended up going home with her older sister and she won't return any of my calls. Her older sister called and told me that I had really hurt her last night and that I needed to apologize. I personally don't feel like I owe my daughter anything. She abused me her whole life. Am I the asshole for not understanding? I'm 28 and I used to be quite overweight. Over the last year or so, I've made many changes in my life and have successfully almost lost 100 pounds. I don't live close to any of my family and I don't post on social media, so my family wasn't really aware of my weight loss. I did mention that I was making healthier choices, but that's it. It's just that every time before that I've tried to lose weight, it hasn't worked out, so I didn't want anyone commenting on it. My sister is 26 and got engaged last year, and I'm super happy for her. Due to circumstances, the wedding had to be pushed back a little bit. It's happening a week from now, and because I haven't seen everyone in so long, I decided to come down 2 weeks earlier to help out and catch up. Well, when I came to see my family, my sister freaked out upon seeing me. As it turns out, she's gained a little bit of weight, not super noticeable to me, she still looks great, but I think that this is the first time in our lives that I'm smaller than her and I've always been the fat sister. She basically accused me of trying to upstage her and my parents are fully taking her side. I'm not really sure if I'm in the wrong here as so many of my family are taking her side of things. Am I the asshole for losing weight before my sister's wedding? My husband and I hired a nanny back in August to take care of our kids while we're working. The kids are on a weird schedule at school where they don't attend every day or all day, so we hired a full-time nanny named Marie. We liked Marie despite some issues with her following guidelines we discussed when we hired her. She let the kids have way too much screen time, she spent more time on her phone than with the kids, she would make messes and let the kids make messes and she wouldn't clean up after them, she had friends over without letting us know, and she let the kids pig out on junk food instead of feeding them real food. All of this had been discussed when we hired her, and we saw it all when we reviewed our security cam footage, so we sat her down about 3 different times and gave her official warnings each time. She'd improve for a while each time but go back to the way she'd been before. 3 days ago, Marie called out and said she was really sick. I told her to get better and then I'd call out from work to be with the kids. I'm in the middle of a big project at work and people not coming in hurt everyone, but I'm a mom first and I don't expect Marie to take care of the kids if she feels sick, so I called out. The next day, it was really hot out and the local water park is running an off-season special with cheap tickets, so I took the kids out, and after a while we ran into Marie and her group of friends. I really couldn't say anything except that I hoped she was feeling better. Marie started to apologize and told me that her best friend had gotten tickets at the park and she wanted to go, but she didn't think I would have given her the day off. I told her that I would have if only she told me the truth. I explained to her that she lied to me and made me call out at a time that was really inconvenient. If she told me the truth, I would have understood and have been more than happy to give her the day off and call it myself. It's the fact that she lied to me is what upset me. I added the lie to her other warnings and decided she wasn't worth keeping employed. My husband and I pay well above market rate and provide everything. All she needed to do was take care of the kids and follow a few rules we set. I took her aside and really quietly and as kindly as possible explained this to her and told her that I paid for the whole week, but she was fired. Marie started crying and her friends figured out what was happening. They called me a bitch, a Karen, a monster. My kids got upset, so I took them and left. Marie has been blowing up my phone with apologies and begging for another chance. Some of my friends said that I should have given her another chance, but that firing her was was an overreaction. Am I the asshole for firing my nanny for faking sick to get out of work? Storytime about when I switched my wife's cat with a more well-behaved lookalike. 6 years ago, I swapped my then-girlfriend, now wife's cat with a more well-behaved lookalike. She had an all-black cat that was extremely aggressive. It scratched everyone, hissed at everyone, and didn't use the litter box half the time. My wife insisted that she could get it to behave better. One week, she went out of town to visit her family and I was supposed to go to her apartment and feed it. The first night I went over, it scratched the shit out of my arm. I joked to the cat that it's not special and I'll replace it if it scratches again. However, that joke stuck with me until I thought about it enough and it wasn't a joke anymore. The next morning, I went to a local animal shelter. I found an identical cat who was already litter box trained and acclimated to people, but was a little skittish. Its old owner died of a heart attack, and the animal shelter people think that that's why it was a little skittish. Overall, though, it was a lot friendlier and better behaved, and the skittishness would help resemble the original cat. So I adopted it, took it to my wife's apartment, settled it in, and then drove the original cat to an animal shelter a town over. I was paranoid that my wife would find out if I took it to a local one. I also double-checked that the shelter I dropped it off at was a no-kill shelter. It's now been 6 years since then. We got married 4 years ago. We still have the swapped cat. It answers to the original cat's name. My wife knows nothing. She loves this cat and brags about how much better behaved it is. Every time I see it, I feel like a total piece of shit. My husband and I, both in our early 30s, have been together for over a decade and made the decision not to have kids. I like kids, I have nieces and nephews, but we just don't want them for our own reasons. He had a vasectomy, which only a few people know about. Our families are aware we don't want kids, as they've asked us before during different major life events. Our wedding, for instance. We recently bought a 3-bedroom home with a nice yard in a nice area. Excited to show our new home to family and friends, major upgrade from our previous home, we hosted a housewarming. During the party, one of my sibling-in-laws, Alex, made a few indirect comments about all the space and how kids would love it in our house. Eventually, they asked point blank when we were having kids. I made a lighthearted joke about it, which is my go-to for this question. Oh, well, I like sushi too much to have to give it up for pregnancy. Plus, not drinking for pregnancy and breastfeeding? No thanks. I try to make it very lighthearted and laugh it off. Most people just laughed along. That seemed to anger Alex, and I was told, children are a joy and a good mother puts her kids before everything else. I agreed. Children are a joy. I like spending time with my nieces and nephews, and obviously I can't be a good mom if I chose sushi over kids, so I just won't be a mom. I was still trying to brush it off in a gentle way because I'm not trying to start a fight by telling them to stop asking in front of everyone because I know my tone will be seen as rude and abrasive. We move on, but Alex is still annoyed and making little comments in their group about how flippant I am about it and how when it finally happens, then I'll understand. My husband heard this and said jokingly, well, if she gets pregnant, that'll be a problem for the divorce lawyers. That seemed to piss them off more, but they stopped. With the holidays coming up, we haven't been invited to Alex's usual Halloween bonfire. When my husband spoke to his parents, they told him that Alex was annoyed that we were so careless and callous about our child-free status. They had realized that we had taken permanent steps to ensure we never had kids. Alex said we know that they had to do IF treatments just to have kids and that we're assholes to just not care. I feel bad because they did do IF and lots of fertility treatments to have their kids, and even then they still had a few miscarriages. I can't imagine wanting kids and struggling to have them and then deal with miscarriages. But at the same time, I'm so tired of justifying and living my life how I want to. I guess I hurt their feelings by saying that I prefer sushi to children. Am I the asshole for saying that? I'm 20 and recently found out that I'm pregnant, which came as a surprise because I'm on birth control. I made an appointment with an OB that's close to me with high ratings to confirm the pregnancy. When I walked in, I was immediately concerned because the woman behind the desk is a friend of my mom's. They're not super close and I hadn't seen her in years, but they've known each other since high school and I know that they sort of keep in touch. I didn't feel ready to tell anyone other than my boyfriend and obviously the doctor about the baby. I was freaking out a little, but my boyfriend assured me that she wouldn't be able to say anything to my mom about the baby without my consent. When I got home, my mom was already waiting for me because she already knew about the baby. Apparently her friend had texted to congratulate her before I could even make it home. Everything's gonna be okay, my mom is being super supportive, but honestly, I'm pissed at this lady and I want to report her to the OB. My family is supportive of the baby, but if she had opened her big mouth to someone with a different kind of family, the outcome could have been really bad. My boyfriend agrees with me, but thinks it's kind of Karen-ish. On the other hand, my mom thinks her friend cost a few lines, but to report her and potentially put her employment at risk would be petty and an asshole move. I think my mom's friend is an asshole and potentially a dangerous one at that. Would I be the asshole for reporting her big mouth to her employer? I have a best friend named Tina who I've known most of my life. We've had a strong friendship from middle school all the way until we graduated from the same college. We've always been there for each other and I tell her pretty much everything. Back in junior year of high school, a guy named Rod sexually assaulted me at a house party. He never apologized for it and it put me in a deep downward spiral to the point where I almost wanted to drop out in order to never see his face again. I told Tina about it and she did everything she could to support me. Fast forward to early 2020. Tina and her boyfriend Josh announced they were getting engaged and Tina wanted me to be the maid of honor. I was beyond excited to do it. We've always talked about being each other's maids of honor. There was another detail though. Josh had a similar friendship history with his best man and they thought it would be adorable if the maid of honor and best man worked together on everything and were their own second package on the wedding day. I guess it was their way of making us feel a little more excited for weddings of our own. I found out that the best man was going to be Rod and he and Josh remained best friends after high school. I thought Rod was just in the friend group, but it turns out that they're as close as could be. My heart sunk and I simply didn't know how to respond. They expected us to work together and be together the whole wedding process, and that sounded like literal hell. I started to think about whether Tina ever told Josh or that Josh heard and just didn't care. All I know is that I was having second thoughts about the wedding after that. chat. I texted Tina about my concerns with Rod coming in the most polite way possible, and she sent me this. I know about what happened with you guys back in the day, but Rod seems like a great guy now. It would just really mean a lot if you could just push that memory away for the duration of this. Please, just trust me. I don't know how to respond to this, and luckily the wedding planning process has been at a halt since COVID. I haven't responded to her since that text, but now this has really been bugging me. If I say no, it would probably break her heart, but I just don't know if I can handle working with my rapist. Am I wrong for not wanting to work with him during her wedding? Part 2, my best friend wants me to work with my rapist on her wedding. I finally replied to Tina with, I've had time to think about it and I just can't be your maid of honor anymore. It's so hurtful that you're telling me to pack up my trauma for who knows how long until your wedding day. I just can't do it. I don't think I'll come at all knowing that he's going to be there. I'm sorry. An hour later, I get a call from Josh. He asked me what's going on with me and Tina and that she was extremely upset. A part of me snapped and I said, I don't know, what's going on with you making someone who raped me your best man? He was confused and I repeated myself. He was silent for a few seconds and then asked if he could come over. I was a little wary of the idea, but I said sure. He comes to my apartment 40 minutes later without Tina. Tina had told Josh that the reason I wasn't coming to the wedding was that I didn't want to work with Rod, because I had a crush on him, and that she was forcing the relationship too much. So basically, she said that we had a petty girl fight. My jaw hit the floor and I was fuming. She had obviously never told Josh what Rod did to me. I shared that Rod had raped me back in high school and that Tina knew about it. I asked if he knew too. He said he didn't, but at one point Rod did mention a few crazy bitches falsely accused him of rape senior year. This obviously didn't include me since I only told Tina and a few family members. Josh believed him at the time, but I guess after hearing me say it, it's starting to dawn on him that his friend was a liar. I could see on Josh's face and body language that the realization really weighed down on him and I felt bad. He thanked me for telling him and left. I was expecting an angry text to come from Tina and sure enough, I got it at like midnight. She went off saying that I'm gonna end up destroying their marriage, how I could do that to her, etc, etc. I just pressed the block button and went to bed. I'm gonna try to connect with other friends and try to move on from this. If I'm feeling brave enough, I might try to find these crazy bitches and see if we can make a case against Rod. This morning, my daughter's alarm was going off for 30 minutes, so I went in to check on her and she was very pale. There was a large blood stain on her bedsheet, and when I pulled that down, almost her whole shirt was drenched in blood. I had my husband call an ambulance and asked her what happened. She told me that the day before, a girl who'd been bullying her threatened her with a knife in the bathroom, and when my daughter tried to defend herself, the bully accidentally stabbed her in the stomach. I was shocked because I thought she had been exaggerating about the extent to which this girl was bullying her. When she was younger, she almost got a teacher in trouble for accusing her of touching her inappropriately, and since then I've taken everything that she says with a grain of salt. The ambulance arrived and took her to the hospital, and when they found out that she'd been stabbed, they contacted the police. My husband and I were questioned for not noticing it or reporting it, and we told him the truth. We had no idea it even happened. We later asked her about how she hid it, and she got super snarky, saying, "It's easy when you have parents who don't care." I later got the real explanation, saying that since it was towards the end of the school day, she put on a sweater over it, drove home, threw their shirt